Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here today. This is going to be Chapter 13 of Life and Teaching of the Masters of the Far East. I am Nathaniel J., and I am narrating Barid Spalding's classic book, The Life and Teaching of the Masters of the Far East. We were up early the next morning. At break of day, we were on our way to Barid home village, which we reached on the evening of the 12th day. We were welcomed by the party which had visited us the last afternoon of our stay in the desert and were invited to stop for a few days' rest. We were shown to quarters that were a real luxury after those we had experienced on the desert. After we had made ourselves presentable, we stepped into the next room and found a number of friends. They greeted us heartily, and we were told that the village was ours and that every door was flung wide to receive us. The governor of the village, through an interpreter, welcomed us, telling us we were to dine at his house and were to start immediately. We filed out of the room, led by the governor, with a guard of 2 soldiers, 1 on each side, as was the custom of the country. Next came the leader with our hostess and our chief with the beautiful lady. Then came Emil and his mother. I walked with them, the rest of the party following. We had proceeded but a short distance when a poorly dressed child stepped from the crowd which had assembled and asked, in the native tongue, if she might speak to Emil's mother. The governor brushed her aside unceremoniously, saying that we could not be bothered with such as she. Emil's mother grasped our arms, and the 3 of us stepped out of the ranks to hear what the girl had to say. As we did this, our hostess hesitated, and as she stepped out of the ranks, the whole company stopped. Emil's mother spoke to the governor, saying she would like to have the rest go on and get seating arrangements completed, and that by that time we surely would be there. Meanwhile, she was holding the girl's hand in hers. As the company moved on, she knelt down and, putting her arms around the little girl, said, "Dear one, what can I do for you?" She found that the child's brother had fallen that afternoon, and they thought his back was broken. The child begged the lady to go with her to see if she could not help him, and he was in great pain. Emil's mother arose, explained the situation to us, and told us to go on, that she would go with the child, then come in later. The leader said that if it was permissible, he would like to go along. Emil's mother invited us all to go, so we turned aside and followed her and the girl as they walked hand in hand, the girl fairly leaping with joy. Our hostess told us that the girl was certain her brother would be healed by the great lady. As we neared the house, the girl bounded ahead to tell her family we were coming. When we came up to the door, we saw that the house was but a mud hut of the lowest order. Emil's mother must have interpreted our thoughts, for she said, "Although it is a hovel, warm hearts beat within." At that moment, the door was thrown open. A gruff, masculine voice spoke, and we stepped inside. If the hut looked wretched from without, it was doubly so from within. It was scarcely large enough for us to crowd into, and the ceiling was so low that we could not stand erect. A dim witch light burned and cast a weird light upon the hard faces of the father and mother as they sat amidst their squalor. In the far corner, on a mass of musty straw and vile-smelling rags, lay a lad not more than 5 years old. His face was drawn and ashen pale. The girl knelt beside him, holding his face in both of her hands, one pressed against each cheek. She was telling him that he was going to be perfectly well again, as the beautiful lady was already there. She removed her hands, moved aside, and gave him a clearer view, and for the first time she saw the rest of the party. Instantly her expression changed, and a great fear seemed to pervade her whole form. She dropped her face in her folded arms, and her form shook with a convulsive sob as she cried out, "Oh, I thought you were coming alone." Emil's mother dropped on her knees beside her, put both arms around her, and held her close for a moment. She became silent, and Emil's mother said she would send us away if the girl only wished it. The girl said she was only surprised and frightened that we need not mind her, and she was only thinking of her brother. Then Emil's mother said, "You love your brother dearly, do you not?" The girl said, who could not have been more than 9 years old, "Yes, but I love everyone." The conversation was interpreted to us by Emil, as none of our party spoke the language. Emil's mother said, "If you love your brother so much, you can help to heal him." And she told the girl to take the position she had been in and to place her hands on each side of his face. Then Emil's mother moved so that she could place her hand on his forehead. Almost instantly, the moans ceased. The boy's face lighted up. His little form relaxed. A perfect calm then settled over the whole scene, and the child slept quietly and naturally. Emil's mother and the girl sat as they were for a few moments. Then, with her left hand, the lady gently removed the girl's hand from the boy's face, saying, "How beautiful he is, how strong and fine." Then Emil's mother removed her hand ever so gently, and as I happened to be standing near her when she extended her left hand, I reached out my hand in order to assist her to her feet. As her hand touched mine, such a thrill went through my whole body that it left me perfectly helpless. She sprang lightly to her feet and said, "For a moment I forgot myself. I should have not taken your hand as I did, for momentarily I seemed to be overwhelmed. So great was the power that was flowing through me. I recovered my composure, though, almost instantly, and the others did not notice as they were all deeply engrossed in what was going on around them. The girl had suddenly thrown herself at Emil's mother's feet, and clasping each in one of her hands was frantically kissing the coverings. Emil's mother reached down and with one hand turned the fervent, tear-stained face upward, then knelt and clasped the child to her and kissed her eyes and lips. The child put both arms around the mother's neck, and both were motionless for a moment. Then that strange light began to pervade the room, and it grew brighter and brighter until every object seemed to be suffused with the light, and nothing cast a shadow. The room seemed to be expanding. The father and the mother of the two children had sat on the dirt floor in stony-faced silence thus far. They arose then, and the expression on their face changed to blank dismay, then to fright, and the man bolted through the door, nearly upsetting the leader of the expedition in his haste to get away. The mother of the household threw herself prostrate at the side of Emil's mother, and sobs shook her frame. Emil's mother placed her hand on the woman's forehead, speaking in a low voice to her. Presently, the sobs ceased. She drew herself to a half-sitting, half-kneeling position, and saw the transformation that had taken place in the room. The expression on her face changed to one of terror. She rose hastily to her feet and started to run from the room. Emil, though, reached out his hand and took one of hers, while the beautiful lady took the other. They held her hands thus for a moment, and the frightened expression changed to a smile. We looked around, and in place of the hovel we had entered, we were in a moderately comfortable furnished room with seats, table, and a clean bed. Emil walked over and picked up the boy, still sound asleep, from the heap of musty straw and rags, placed him tenderly on the clean bed, and drew the covers over him. As he did so, he stooped and kissed the child's forehead as tenderly as any woman could have done. Emil's mother and the girl arose and walked to where the mother of the household stood. We all gathered around them. The mother sank to her knees and, grasping the feet of Emil's mother, began kissing them and entreating her not to leave. Emil stepped forward and, stooping down, took the woman's hands and drew her to her feet, all the time speaking quietly to her in her own language. As she stood erect, the old, soiled garments she had been wearing were changed to new ones. She stood in mystified silence for a moment, then threw herself into the outstretched arms of Emil's mother. They stood in this attitude for a moment, when Emil reached out and, placing his hands upon their arms, separated them. Then the girl rushed forward in outstretched hands, crying, "See, see, my things are new!" She turned to Emil's mother, who stooped and picked her up. Then the child put her arms around her neck and her face close to her shoulder. The leader of the expedition was standing just back of Emil's mother, and the child reached out her hands over the mother's shoulder toward him, lifting her face, and gave him a happy smile. The leader stepped forward and held out his hands. The child clasped them, saying that she loved all, but not as much as she did this dear lady, meaning Emil's mother. Emil said he would go and find the father. He returned in a few moments, bringing the frightened and half-sullen father with him. Still, we could see that underneath the sullenness, there was a deep appreciation. We prepared to leave, and as we left, the mother of the household asked if we would not come again, and was told that we would see her again the next day. So, in recap there, kind of self-explanatory, but I felt like I might have butchered the reading a little bit. Masters are traveling along from Barid home village, and they're going to the governor's house. They are greeted along the way by a young girl who says, "Can you please come help my brother, for he's fallen and we fear that he's broken his back." So they go to the house, and it's a hovel. They step inside, they can barely even stand up, and due course passes, and the family now has a healed son, brand new home with brand new furnishings inside. And later on, they go and describe the place a little bit more. But basically, the masters, through the ability to manifest from thin air, from the invisible, were able to help this family. So in dire need and in a real dire situation, the masters were able to help a family, in the daughter's case, who expected them to do as such. We hurried away to the governor's house, fearful lest we had kept the party waiting. Although the time had seemed hours, we could not have been away for more than 30 minutes. I am certain it all happened in much less time than it has taken me to write about it. We arrived at the house just as the rest of the party were taking their seats at the table. The leader of the expedition asked if he might sit by our chief, as it was so arranged. It was easily seen that he was very much agitated, and the chief said afterwards that the man was so moved by what he had seen that he could scarcely keep quiet. The seating arrangements were the governor at the head of the table, at his right Emil's mother, then Emil, the beautiful lady, our chief, and the leader of the expedition. On the governor's left sat our hostess, then Emil's son and his sister. I mention these arrangements because of what happened later. After we all were seated, the meal progressed very nicely until it was about half concluded. The governor addressed Barid, asking him if he would not continue a talk he had started a short time before, which had been interrupted by the arrival of a governor from a larger village. Barid arose and said that he had been talking of the similarity of the lives of Buddha and Jesus. With our permission, he would continue to talk, but it would be necessary to speak in a language that the host understood, as it was customary to have an interpreter unless the speaker did not speak the language of the people. Jast volunteered to act as our interpreter, but when the governor understood the situation, he insisted that Barid should speak in English and Jast would interpret to him, as the greater majority spoke and understood English. Then Barid went on to say, "We can compare in our own thoughts what the power of man would be if all the attributes of true spirit dominated his every action, deed, and thought. Or, as Jesus said, when the Holy Spirit has come upon you. In this, he referred to the time when the God power should fully determine the lives of all his children. This means God manifest in the flesh. In reality, do we not see this spiritual unfoldment for all people coming through the lives and teachings of seers and prophets in a greater or lesser degree, in proportion as their spiritual unfoldment approaches the perfect development of God's manifesting throughout all of his children? It is quite evident that those who have followed steadfastly the true ideals of life, which they have perceived as coming directly from God and thus connecting God with man, have made the greatest attainments towards nobility of character, purity of soul, and moral grandeur of life. Should those who seek to follow them by incorporating their ideals in individuality be able to accomplish as they have accomplished, the world must finally accept that the lessons they gave out as their lives presage the undeveloped possibilities of all God's children. Still, none of these has claimed that they have reached the ultimate perfection which God has chosen for his children. For Jesus said, "He that believes in me, the works that I do shall he do also, yet I go unto the Father." Both Jesus and Buddha said, "You shall be perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect." These sons of God are not mythical persons, but their lives and work have spoken definitely in the lives and hearts of all men down through history. There have been myth and tradition woven about their lives. The effective test is for one who is interested in their lives and characters personally to accept and apply their teachings in his everyday life. The fact that the ideals expressed by these great men are those held as the ideals that govern all truly great people is a further proof of their truth. If one attempts to refute the lives of these great men, one may as well ask why great religions exist. It is most certain that they are the foundation and bear the footprints of an irresistible instinctive urge or instinct which has presaged the great depth and true basis of the betterment of mankind, and they outlive and outshine any other possible attempt to relieve the human family from limitation and bondage. So Barid is talking about the comparison between the lives of Jesus and the life of the Buddha. And he goes as far as to say, which is basically undisputed, that in attempts to lift the veil from the eyes of humanity and the burden of the beast in living in physical density and toiling by the sweat of our own brow and falling prey to fear and superstition, none outshine the lives of the Buddha and Jesus Christ in their attempts to lift said veil. None outshine them in their holding steadfast to the ideal of the Christ light, or the cosmic conscious energy that pervades all things. When it comes to Buddha and Jesus, none have walked the earth and demonstrated a more pure outflowing or a more transparent form of personality between themselves and the logos of the cosmos, which is the divine creative principle, the first and only begotten by the Father, or the utmost Godhead. When it comes to those two individuals and the lives that they lived, None outshine them as a example of what one can do and what one can be. The records of these men's lives are preserved for us, and their lives become a legitimate source of inquiry and research if we will but open our hearts, pursue this inquiry with an open mind, and make their lives, teaching, and ideals our very own. In no other way can we enter in and become one with their lives. This has been the inspired message of every true seer since the world's history began. Two, at least, of these spiritually enlightened men, Jesus and Buddha, brought to fruition the great possibilities they taught. They have said in almost the same words, "I am the way, the truth, and the light of life for all men." In the divinity of their attitude, they assumed they could truly say, "I am the light of the world. He who follows me, who walks and lives as I have lived, shall not walk in darkness, but shall have eternal life, and shall be abundantly free from all limitations." Both, in nearly the same words, said, "To this end was I born, and for this cause came I unto the world, that I should bear witness unto the truth. Everyone that is of this truth hears my voice." These words must have had a direct bearing upon the true unfoldment of the Christ life in every child of God. So I used a term earlier, which was personality transparency, because every one of us, upon the encasement of our soul into a physical body, develops a personality. And if taken to the extreme and believed in as the thing that moves and has its way and makes its mark upon the world, one develops an ego. And when I speak of personality transparency, one recognizes a simple truth that the ego is an illusion. It is something that we feed into through our misappropriated thought energy. And if we are able to, instead of directing energy into the development of a distinct and individualized personality, we unfold or unwrap the layers of that delusional style of thought, we can gradually become more transparent with the logos of the universe, with God, to the point where you are like Jesus or the Buddha, and when they are speaking, "I am the truth, I am the light, I am the way," it is not a individual personality that is speaking these words. It is a timeless identity, the I am principle, which is communicating from the here and now, which exists in every single plane of experience, all the way from the highest dimensions or the highest kingdoms of heaven, all the way down to the lowest pits of quantum energy. The here and now pervades all things. And it is that identity which is synonymous with the smallest small and the tallest tall, speaking through a conduit, if you will. And it is an amalgamation of that unconditionally loving creation of God and the individual no longer perceiving duality or individualism and assimilating their what was once a perceived individual personality with the greater I am. So if you want to think of it a different way, think of it like our sun in the solar system with a larger sun back of it, and the two assimilate into one larger body of unconditional radiance pouring out into the cosmos and supporting all life. But what we see as speaking the words, "I am the truth, the light, and the way," is the sun, but that communication is coming through from the entire universe. It's like the entire universe is speaking that word all at once, and we perceive it as coming directly out of our specific sun. And then take that even down to a smaller level and imagine Jesus or Buddha standing on the planet Earth, and the words are coming through their body, but they are the same exact words as that are coming from the sun, that are coming from the universe. So it's this one collective identity speaking through a channel. And it is ultimately our work. If we choose to endeavor upon that path, we are 100% capable of making our personalities as transparent as that of Jesus and Buddha or Krishna or Muhammad or any of the great prophets and seers, so that one can allow for the flow of intelligent infinity through their personality, through their temple, unto the masses, unto the world, unto those with eyes to see and ears to hear. Do not all the religions of the world reveal a higher power in man that is struggling to be free from the limitations of sense? The scriptures of the different races are outward expressions of this intelligence. The book of Job in your Bible antedates all of your history. It was written in this country, and its mystical meaning has been preserved through all the changes that have taken place, although it has been nearly smothered by the addition of folklore. Though the people were nearly all consumed, the mystical word of Job will never be consumed, for he that dwells in the secret place of the Most High dwells in the shadow of the Almighty One. Another thing we must see is that all scriptures came from religion and not religion from the scriptures. The scriptures are a product of religion, not the cause of it. The history of religion came out of experiences, while the Gospels came out of all religions. And this is where we talk about the religion of the heart. For one is born into the world and inundated by culture, which, whether you're an atheist or whether you're a religious adherent, has some type of, this is how the world works, this is how you move and have your being in it, and this is what has more meaning than just what you can see in front of your eyes. And it is up to every single one of us to be inundated by these experiences until we are able to contact the core of the message that those experiences are, that those words and scriptures are trying to communicate to us. And then at a certain point, we cast off the need for instruction from the exterior or from adherence to a code or a dogma or a ritualistic manner of going about being holy and worshiping, and we connect with the thing that is ultimately inspiring those scriptures and those teachings, which is an experience of the divine. So contacting that core energy, having it speak and flow through you, is the experience that then goes on to inspire your communicating your experience of that contact, which then gets translated down through history into scriptures, and then the game of telephone begins. But nonetheless, once you realize that it's a game of telephone that you are receiving the communication through, you cast that away. You give praise and thanks. You were such of service to me, but now I must contact it directly for myself. For I have been perceiving God through mirrors and channels, and now I want to approach thy face directly. You will soon find that unity of purpose and effort will be the most potent means to attain any desired end, single-pointedness of mind. Instead of numerous people thinking in all directions and pulling in as many, they will think as one. Then man will know what it means to give a long pull and a strong pull and a pull all together. Then you will see that when the unity of will is set in motion, all things are possible. When man casts the selfish, satanic thoughts from his consciousness, The battle of Gog and Magog will cease, and this will not be accomplished by any outside deity. No one is coming to save anyone. It is up to you contacting the Christ light within yourself that is your means of salvation. By whatever means you get there, whether it's through Bhakti Yoga, which is the unadulterated, unending giving of praise and reverence in song and dance and worship, whether it's through Jnana Yoga, which is studying the classics of the world until you get to the point where you're like, I don't need to read anymore. I know that it's real. Now I'm going to go into sadhana, where I am going to live in accordance with what I have learned, and I am going to be the hands and feet of Jesus. I am going to assimilate and strip away the outcroppings of my individualized delusional thinking that says I am separate from all things and all energy, and I am going to be one with it and live as an example now for others to emulate, not in the search of vanity, not in the search of fame, but as a living and breathing and walking testament to the goodness of God. I am going to be the scriptures made manifest in flesh and live according to what all of my experiences have proven to me to be the one true way to live, which is by assimilating our individuality with unity and being as Christ Jesus. When Jesus said, "My words are spirit and they are life," he touched that inner word that created all things, and he knew that his word was filled with a life essence and the moving power that would produce the thing he desired. If these words would ring through the souls of all men and nations, they would know that they have access to the fountain of eternal life, which flows from God. Some may express the Christ by seeing the Christ enthroned just back of the heart, the seat of love. From this throne, see the Christ directing every activity of your body in perfect accord with God's immutable law, and know that you are cooperating with Christ in the ideals received direct from the divine mind. Then see the Christ seated on his throne, expanding and including every atom, cell, fiber, muscle, and organ of your whole body. In fact, he has expanded until your whole body is the pure Christ, the only begotten Son of God, the pure temple where God is at home and loves to dwell. From this throne, you can call upon every center of your whole body. You can say to those centers that you are positive, loving, powerful, wise, fearless, a free spirit. You are pure with the purity of spirit. No mortal thought or desire or impurity can come near you. You are immersed in the pure Christ. The spirit of life in the Christ makes you the pure temple of God. Here, you may pause and say, Father, in this as well in all things, reveal the Christ, your perfect Son, to me. Then bless the Christ. Thus ends the reading of part 1 from chapter 13 of Life and Teaching of the Masters of the Far East. Some very powerful stuff, and I think I gave ample commentary there to suffice for this day. And I will end by saying that truly, when you get into the higher teachings of Christianity or Buddhism or any religion on earth for that matter, they all trace themselves back to this principle that there is a divine animating source of life radiating from within you, and that one only need polish and fan that flame until it engulfs the flesh and radiates its lights its light out. Upon doing so, one yokes themselves with the will of the divine, becomes service to others oriented, and lives a life of example for unconditional love, unconditional forgiveness, unconditional everything. Abundance, light, power, resource, wealth, health, divinity. Every single good thing that is a derivative from love becomes manifest within what you already are. It's already there. And if you speak unto it like it is the real thing that it is, it will only be a matter of time before it expands to engulf your experience of life and become your reality. Then in the fear of pandemic, in the fear of old age or insecurity or illness, you may speak unto that thing, which is inferior compared to your unconditional love, light body, and say, thou hast no place here, and thou hast cast out. For thou art not a part of my identity. I am the only begotten Son of God. Therefore, leave, and it shall be done. Speak boldly and confidently unto the reality which exists as it is here and now, and see the weight of the unadulterated truth make way for the experiences which our finite mind cannot grasp, which may only unfold in their purity and beauty when we have amalgamated our mind with the universal and achieved the transparency of personality, that which Jesus and the Buddha exemplified in life. Namaste.